Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The whole purpose of Advaita Prakaranam is to make you see what Upanishad means by non-duality. Because even if you have listened to Upanishads and what it has to say, it may still what? You may still construe that non-duality in a different way in your mind. Okay? So when all these different things are shown, the attempt is to make sure that you understand the way it is meant to be understood. Okay? So again, one should, because nobody understands the vision of non-duality the first time. So we all have certain notions. When we see what the Upanishads are saying, we create our own ideas. Okay? So what is Upanishad committed to, or the teachers committed to? Make sure that you don't carry some ideas which don't correspond to reality. Okay? So please now don't start having another complex. Oh my God, I've been thinking about it like this. Oh my God, I've been thinking about like that. That's normal, right? Everybody does that. And in fact, we do it, and in Gaudapada's time, they did it, and in previous teachers' time, they did it. Okay? And that's why the teaching tradition knows a human mind, how they will receive, what are the possible ways in which they will receive this knowledge of non-duality, which is not in keeping with what the Upanishad is trying to say. So the teaching methodology itself is anticipating those possible misconceptions, and what are they doing? They are trying to remove those misconceptions so that you understand it accurately. Okay? So therefore the commitment is not to to say, those people are stupid and that people are stupid and they haven't understood anything. Not at all. Okay? And there is compassion in it. The compassion is that they are committed, if they are communicating something to you, they are committed to what? Your understanding it accurately. Okay? So even though they have sometimes, they make, they say that how silly it is to be like that, but the intention is not to make fun of them or to look down upon them, but the whole thing is how silly our mind is that it construes a reality which is sometimes so different from what is being communicated. So you can just laugh, right? Please don't take it all again be another burden. Oh, I have been thinking like that. Everybody has been. Until the person understands the reality accurately, we all think of it as something different than what it is. And the whole teaching, why do we expose ourselves to teaching again and again and again? What happens? Every time we shed something or the other. And that's the whole process. This is what we call growing clarity. Okay? So please now again don't create another way to judge yourself. Now enough of self-judgment and putting oneself down. Okay? One has to, one has to nurture oneself. One has to feel good about oneself. And when the ideas are laughed at, you are not laughed at. Right? The ideas are silly, and until what? We see the fallacy in their thinking. Until we don't see fallacy in their thinking, what happens? We are all attached to those ideas. That's growth. That is growth in your clarity. Okay? But there is nothing personal about anything. It's all just the commitment of the whole teaching tradition is to convey this vision to you as accurately as possible. And also to make sure that you don't misconstrue it. That's all. Okay, so this is something which is very important to keep in mind. Otherwise, it creates, because we all have been holding on to one idea or the other at some point in time. It's very natural. Okay, so therefore, we just have to move on by giving up those ideas and come more closer to reality. That's all. Okay. Now, the next verse is going. न भवति अमृतं मर्त्यञ्च अमृतं तथा प्रकृतेः अन्यथा भावः न कथंचित् भविष्यति. What is something very important is, in this whole game, that I am not that and I will gain it. So that whole orientation is something which is so strong in human mind that he is giving a logic. What is the logic he is giving? He says, na bhavati amrutam martya. Okay? That which is immortal, does it ever become mortal? No. Okay? And that which is mortal, does it become immortal?
That which is
mortal, can it become as a result of any action? Can it become immortal? So that means that if you are, this is the logic we give very much at the beginning. In fact, it's interesting, all the logics that we give in the teaching methodology, and now I see, my God, this is where it comes from. Gaudapada has talked about all of this. Okay? So if you are, what is the logic we give? If you are basically a mortal person, limited, your action is limited. I think that's the logic that Carl was giving. Okay? A limited person performing limited action, can it get limitlessness?
A limited person performing
limited action gets limited result.
Yeah.
Right? Now through this limited, you add limited result plus limited result plus limited result. What does it become limitless? No. Exactly. Okay? So this whole orientation that I am not that right now, and one action of mine, whether it is an upasana or it is a prayer or it is something, will get me that immortality, is something which is what? A wrong orientation. Okay? What is martyam? Amrutam na bhavet. Okay? And what is amrutam? If it is already immortal, okay, does it become mortal? No. Right? So whatever is the prakriti, prakrutehe anyatha bhava na kathanchit bhavishyati. Okay? Whatever is the real nature of that thing, it never changes that nature. Okay? If the sugar is sweet, can any action make it non-sweet? If the salt is salty, can any action make it non-salty? Okay. You can change the taste by doing what? Adding salt, adding chili, adding sugar. Okay. So that means your taste is not only salty. That is possible. But the saltiness, can you remove? Okay. So therefore, something, the orientation that right now I am not this, and then what? I am trying to change. Now I am limited. Now what? Through an action I want to become limitless. Either through an action or through an experience or through some technique, I want to become limitless, is a wrong orientation in the first place. And if you think about it, how many of even our search for freedom, when we engage in so many things, what is the orientation? Right now, I am bound, this is reality about me, and I want to do something to what? Free myself. whether you are so-called in the material world or in the so-called spiritual world, what? Your limitation is taken as the fact. So what Gaudapada is saying is, if your limitation is a fact, in fact there is no solution. The only solution is that you are not limited. Your search for freedom ends only when you recognize the fact that you are never bound.
Can I ask this one question?
Yes.
Either we know it or not know it, the reality will not change.
Exactly.
So just by knowing it,
Yes.
why does our freedom depend on our knowing about it, and knowing our reality?
Why not? I mean, why? What keeps you away from your reality?
My reality will not change even if I don't know about it.
Now, what you are talking about is, now this question is at two levels. What you are asking is at two levels. Okay? Now, what you are saying is, whether you know it or not, does it make any difference to the awareness? For awareness, it makes no difference whatsoever. Okay? Awareness does not become enlightened. Please understand. Right? But it makes difference to who? To I, the individual. Okay?
Deposit physical certificate.
Exactly. Because where does the ignorance lie? Does the ignorance lie in awareness? No. The ignorance lies where? To this individual. This individual thinks I am limited. So where is the ignorance? In the mind. Okay? And where does the knowledge take place? In the mind. Okay? So now the mind in which the knowledge takes place sees the reality of awareness as always free. Okay? But only if the knowledge takes place in the mind sees the reality of awareness. From the awareness standpoint, nothing changes. But from your standpoint, the person who's struggling for the freedom, where is the conclusion that I'm bound? In the mind. That's where the knowledge has to take place. Where there is ignorance, that's exactly where it's opposite what? Knowledge has to take place. Are you making any changes in awareness? No.
You will make change in the causal.
Exactly. The awareness, like everything, sustains your ignorance, sustains your knowledge, itself is free from both. Okay. So this is once the logic is actually understood intimately, then there is no such thing that, oh, Vedanta is saying this and something else is saying that, and then both are right. Because one starts with an assumption. What? One starts with a premise that you are free, and the other starts with the premise that you are bound and you have to do something. Can you then say, oh, let us be compassionate and say everybody is equally right? Sometimes, we think that, oh, we have to be accepting and we have to be accommodating, and, it's like the mathematics teacher. He says, starts with this thing, let me be compassionate. Everybody is right. So the student who says 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is right. The student who says 2 plus 2 is equal to 10 is right. The student who says 2 plus 2 is equal to 25 is right. Because we all have a given standpoint. And they are all truth. Will that person be a good mathematics teacher? Reality is Vastu Tantra. It is what it is. Where is the ignorance? In my mind. Where do I have to remove that ignorance? In the mind. Where there is ignorance, that's where it has to be removed. So that my mind sees the reality as it is. From the standpoint of reality, whether you are ignorant or you have knowledge, does it make any difference? No. And this is why the verse is, there is no teacher. From the standpoint of the final reality, what is the vision? From the standpoint of awareness, there is what? No teacher, no student, no books. Everything is only as though. Okay. But for you, where there is ignorance, what choice do you have but to remove it? And when one person uses one's mind and removes the ignorance, does it get automatically removed for everybody else? No. Right? So that means your ignorance only you have to remove. Nobody else can remove for you.
So this is also like a law.
This is also the law. Now, so this is what you are saying is very true. Now he is talking from the standpoint of awareness. Okay? So here he says, Asparsha yogo vainama durdarsham sarva yogi bihi yoginaha bibhyati hi asmat abhaye bhayadarshinaha. Okay? This yoga is this reality that is referred to be as untouched by anything. This is what? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma is difficult to see by all yogis. Okay? We saw previously so many people are what? Engaged in knowing the truth. Some people get it totally wrong, some people get it what? Partially right, somebody sees it but vaguely. So there is a degree of what? Degrees of what?
Truth.
In what they are thinking.
Yeah, in their perception.
Right? In their perception. Absolutely. So this is what he says. But whatever somebody has totally erroneously understood it, somebody has partially understood it, somebody understands the ideas but not totally clear, vaguely. Okay? With reference to awareness, does it make any difference? No. Right? The ignorance, where does it occur? In the mind. The different conditions of the mind, does it touch the awareness? No. Okay? So, asparsha yoga. Okay? That awareness is not, it's sustaining everything. Your ignorance, your partial knowledge, your erroneous knowledge, your clear knowledge, everything. Itself is untouched by everything. Okay? But it is durdarsha. It's difficult to understand accurately. Why? Because even when it is taught, what happens? I continue to impute something to it which does not exist. Okay. And once I make one fundamental mistake, then what? I have a tendency to get fascinated by that and go very deep into it. That means I am taken on a tangent. And I go deeper and deeper into that tangent, thinking that I am understanding more and more and more. This is how you have very sincere seekers, but what? Highly misguided. You need grace of Ishvara, and you need to make your effort by asking for the truth. Ask for clarity, do Gayatri Mantra. Do the prayer Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritagamaya. Don't take your mind and its creative capacity for granted. Or understanding capacity. You need help. Because so many ways you go on a tangent without even realizing it. Okay? He says, Durdarsha Yogi Bihi. People make a lot of effort with a lot of sincerity and they are still misguided. Okay? And what? Yoginaha bibhyatihi asmat abhaye bhayadarshinaha. Where there is no bhaya, where there is absolutely fearlessness, fear comes from what? Exactly. I and something else brings fear. Fear of something else.
And that something can be taken from us.
Exactly. So that means, what is the vision of the person who understands the reality? There is no second thing. Fear is always of a second thing. The second thing does not exist. All that is here is not. Okay? Now you have to be careful, because we saw the example, okay, that the wise person does not say, oh, the elephant is I. Please understand, I am I, and therefore I have no fear, and rushes to embrace the elephant. We are not saying not having that kind of instinctual fear. That is all happening within what? Mithya. It is happening within what? Physical forms are different. The arrangements is different. I do what needs to be done. Okay? But in reality, there is no distinction whatsoever. And while that instinctual fear is happening, awareness is ever affected? No. So where is this emotion of fear and where there is no fear is totally clearly understood. So while experiencing the instinctual fear, what do I conclude? I am never subject to fear. I don't need to eliminate. Okay. And this is what he says, that asparshaha, durdarsha and abhaya bhayadarshana. Okay. And this is where, imagine you think that you are awareness, and then there is this whole prakriti which is equally real, and you have to constantly what? Detach yourself from this prakriti and experience this awareness unconnected to prakriti. You are creating a lot of fear, because anything happens, any association with the world will create what? Fear. Because awareness is mixed with what? Prakriti. Because awareness can never be separated from Prakriti. Even the thought becomes source of great fear. Because the thought is what? Part of the physical body, and it is Prakriti. And who are you? Purusha, the awareness. So now the Prakriti has come and attacked the Purusha when the thought comes. And now, what do I need to do? Purusha has to keep away the Prakriti. Okay. Everything becomes a huge source of fear if you don't understand reality accurately. You can be thinking about something. This is what is the difference between a person and a philosopher. Okay? A normal person is just looking at the world and what? Acting in it with whatever little understanding the person has. A philosopher is the one who tries to figure out what the world is, spends hours and hours in one's life trying to understand it, and comes up with what? Wrong conclusion, and then gets committed to it. This is what we call Dvaitins. They think about reality. But what is their conclusion? The differences are real. Okay. And who is the Advaitin? They think about reality, and what is their conclusion?
They acknowledge the difference, and they think that there is greater reality to this, which we have to aim for.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, so this is what the perception remains, but the conclusion changes. Okay, most of our learning is also like that. Okay, anything which is empirically true, it's always like that. Okay, our perception is what? That the earth is flat. And this is why for a long time humanity believed what? That the earth is flat, because this is what the perception says. Some clever guy understood when in fact he was just looking at the sea and the boat disappeared from his vision. So he started thinking about it. He says, if the earth is flat, how come till here I see the boat and then it disappears? That's what got him thinking. And what did he figure out? That the earth is a globe. When he understood the earth is a globe, did he see the curvature? No.
He saw its function.
Exactly.
By inference.
By inference.
By influence.
Right? He figured it out, and then what did he? Then he has to reconcile his perception. Then he has to ask, if the earth is a globe, why do I and everybody else perceive it as flat? That again you need to reconcile.
Because you just consider what
The eyes,
limited
the way they are
vision.
designed. Exactly. So then you reconcile. You go back and check if this is the case, what is giving a rise to that flat perception of flatness. When you reconcile everything, then your knowledge becomes what? Accurate. Yeah. Okay. The perception of duality remains even for a wise person. In fact, the person is able to distinguish things even more accurately. Okay. What does change? The conclusion. What is the conclusion? As Savita says, yeah, the changes, the forms are there are differences. The minds are there are differences. The causes are different, they are all different. But what is the conclusion? There is an underlying reality which makes them what they are, which is what? Not subject to any change, not subject to any attributes, and this is who I am. And the whole, all these different forms and what? The names and the laws they depend upon. This is the conclusion. Perception remains exactly like anybody else. You don't need to, we are not talking about changing perceptions. We are talking about changing the conclusion. If the world was not set up, if awareness was given to you as one limitless, not connected to anything, nobody will make a mistake in the first place. Awareness is given to you as what? As though confined to the physical body and mind. Just like this cup space is given to you as though confined to this cup. That's why there is a mistake. Okay? We are not talking about changing our perception, we are talking about changing our conclusion based on perception. Okay? So here he says, asparsha, otherwise you will keep on creating bhaya when there is no bhaya. Now, the next two verses are nice. Here he says, Laye sambodhayet chittam vikshiptam shamayet punaha sakashayam vijaniyat sampraptam na chalayet. Okay? So here he is talking about the different... now, one thing is very, very important. Many people ask if this is the reality and the whole pursuit is understanding the reality as it is and removing my notions that are happening in the mind, right? Why meditation? What is the role of meditation? So this verse answers that question. Okay? So the verse says, my may one. Yeah. May one wake up when the mind is entering into the state of sleep. May one bring back the distracted mind into tranquility again. May one understand that the mind is tinged with kashaya when the mind is resolved. May one not make it think about something else. Okay? So, this is something which is important. What is the purpose of meditation? If the whole thing is about my understanding the reality, how does, which I then need to, for which, what do I need to do? I need to listen to what Vedanta Shastra is talking about, I need to reflect on it, I need to what? Change the way I see and interact with the world. So, what is the purpose of meditation? Okay. The meditation has a huge role to play. Why? Okay. Because where is the ignorance? In the mind. What needs to be prepared in order to understand the reality? The mind. Where will the knowledge take place? In the mind. Okay. So what does meditation do? Prepares the mind. Okay. So there is one way of preparing the mind, which is what? When I interact with the world, I what? Understand dharma, how it operates, I understand what? The results, where they come from, I take care of my distortions. This is all is done in what? Waking, when I am transacting with the world. Okay? But the meditation also has a huge role to play. Because generally what happens is, my mind operates at a very superficial level. And it is constantly distracted. Okay? I want to pay attention to one thing that the teacher is talking, but my mind is thinking about something else. Or it is sleepy. It cannot concentrate. Okay? So therefore, so much of the teaching is left out. Okay? Because the mind is not in tune with Shastra and the teacher. When the teacher is explaining something, you think, yeah, I understood, let me go to the next point. That keeps you from understanding that point in totality. Okay. Or when the teacher, as long as the teacher confirms what I think, I am with the teacher. The minute the teacher says something which I don't believe in, there is resistance. Huge learning block. That means I come to the teacher to validate my ideas. I don't come to teacher to learn what the teacher has to show me. Teacher is good as long as my ideas are validated. No learning takes place like that. That is your self-created block. So many blocks are there. Distraction, not paying attention, sleepiness, okay, superficiality of the mind, not ability to focus on one given thing, moving from one subject to the other. How are you going to deal with these kind of inadequacies of the mind? Meditation. Okay, what does meditation do? The first thing, okay, nalayam sambuddhaye chittam. One thing that happens very commonly when for us, the only time we relax is the time of what? In deep sleep. Okay? So that means when we engage in the world, we don't quite know how to relax. So in meditation, when you are asked to relax, what happens? You fall asleep. Because the only time that I find myself relaxed, my association is what? Relaxation means what? Sleep. Now I have to learn to be awake and relaxed. What does meditation do? A, you're not sleeping, you're not supposed to be sleeping, and still what? See that you're relaxed. This is where, these are what Surya is showing, all the techniques to relax you. What are the techniques he uses to relax you? Breathe, observation of breathing, observing the body. These are all the ways to keep you awake and at the same time what? Make you relaxed. Otherwise we think, yeah, this is just some kind of a mechanical exercise, what am I getting out of it? This is a very important role, because then if you have an insight into the fact that while being in waking you can be equally relaxed. Imagine then out of meditation, when you are transacting with the world, what happens? Or you get nervous, you again the whole tendency of moving one thing to the other, anxiety, fear, sadness, everything re-emerges. Imagine now you are relaxed. Waking and relaxed. How do you become awake and relaxed? Where is the training? Where is the first insight given? In the meditation. You start with meditation, then what happens? You carry the meditation forward to what? Your waking. Yes. It's not that only in meditation you are relaxed. Then what you see awake and relaxed in meditation is then further carried forward what? In your day-to-day transaction.
Meditation is a very important
Exactly. Absolutely. Meditation is an extremely important practice in the whole knowledge. And this is why we do it every morning. But we, for Vedanta, we don't only use it for relaxation. We use it for many other things. What is the second use of meditation? Here it says, what? That vikshiptam, okay? Vikshiptam chittam. What is vikshiptam chittam? The mind which is distracted. Okay? So, Surya is saying every morning, okay, that means a mind which is what? Distracted means it goes from one subject to the other. The teacher is talking something, I am thinking about something else. I am already thinking, oh now my next flight is this, and when I go home my husband will ask this, and what will I answer? So whatever the teacher is saying, half of it is missed out. Then you say, yeah, did I hear this again? Really? Was this discussed? This is the mind which is distracted. Okay? Now how do I take care of a mind which is distracted? In meditation, there is a very ingenious technique to make the mind focused. What is the technique? I tell my mind, for next 10 minutes, I am going to chant Om Ishaya Namaha. Om Ishaya Namaha. What will happen? Isha. What is this Isha? But I prefer Shiva. Okay. Mind is what? What has happened? Distracted. Okay. So now, because I have given a task to the mind, saying that for next 10 minutes, I want you to do this, and the mind goes ahead and does what? Something else. Now, what do I do? Bring it back. Okay. So therefore, this discipline of bringing the mind back to a given task that you initiate in meditation, then where is it carried forward? In your day-to-day life. So then, when you are studying anything, okay, the mind's tendency to be distracted is what? checked. Because the mind, through what you have learned in the meditation, by bringing it back, okay, that means over a period of time, it doesn't go so much out because you have done what? Again and again brought it back. You have gained certain mastery over your ways of being. When you have gained that mastery over your mind, then that same mind can be carried forward what? In the waking. When you are engaged in something, you are engaged in it fully and you are not distracted. Vichitta, chitta. Meditation is a very useful tool to make your mind focused. Okay? The other is, what is the third problem? The mind is sakashayam. What is sakashayam? That means the mind is inflicted with all kinds of guilt and hurt that we are carrying. That's not going to go away overnight. Okay? So therefore, one thing, the two girls. So, the meditation or contemplation is necessary to what? First is the sleepy mind, which is what? This relaxation and sleep are always what? Together. In meditation, you discover yourself as what? Relaxed and yet awake. Then you carry it forward back in the waking. Okay? The second is distraction. Distraction means that you keep on, because you keep on wondering, you don't catch 100% of what is being said, right? So therefore, you check your mind's tendency to wander by doing what? Japa. When you say, for next 10 minutes, I'm going to do this japa, when your mind is distracted, what do? You bring it back. Okay? By doing that, you bring what? You make your mind more focused. Okay? What is the third kind of a problem with the mind? Sakashayam. Sakashayam means all the subjectivities, all the hurt, all the guilt, all the fears that you have been carrying within you, that are all there. The mind which is listening to Vedanta is afflicted in many ways. Okay? So that afflicted mind is not really available to see the truth very clearly. So what does meditation do? Meditation does it does two things, right? First is in japa, okay? There is first japa which is Om Ishaya Namaha. What is the second mantra? Om Ishaya Namaha. Okay? Now, what does this do? This particular thing of chanting one mantra over a period of time does a very important function. And that function is that our mind's tendency is to move through association. Association means, now I think of Shiva, then I think about Kedarnath, then I think of what?
Badrinath.
Then Badrinath, and then from Badri to this in 1993 when I had gone there with my parents. Then that aloo paratha was so good. So you move from what? Starting from what is my subject matter? Shiva. Where have I landed up? Aloo paratha. In how long?
Seconds.
In seconds. Right? So that means our mind, what? Through association creates a huge something, a huge picture or a huge thing which has got nothing to do with where we started from. Okay? Now, imagine most of our reactions that we have, the anger. Okay? One stimuli happens, and what do? Through so many associations, you make a huge picture out of it. Okay? And then you are so angry. Okay? Same thing, the mind which is what? Moving through association creates one whole different reality. The same is the one which leads to all your afflictions. Okay? You build on stories. When we do this workshop, we start with a simple example. The simple example is you are passing by and you say hi to somebody and the person doesn't respond. That is a fact. That is an event. What goes on in your mind?
It's arrogant or something.
Exactly. You build a whole story around it. Okay? The person is inconsiderate, the person is arrogant, look at this, or have I done something wrong? The person doesn't feel... so you create one whole set of big story around it through what? All association. And then what happens? You suffer. Is it because of the event or all this big picture that you have created about it?
Picture.
The picture. She's a psychologist, she knows a lot of our suffering is due to the pictures that we have created, which has some truth, external truth, right? But the picture makes it even much worse, the impact of it much worse. Okay? How do you check the tendency of mind to build from one thought to the other, to the other, to the other? The first thought is Om Namah Shivaya. What is the second thought? Not a build-up on that. The second thought is also Om Namah Shivaya. The third thought is what? Not a further build-up on that. The third thought is what? Om Namah Shivaya. This checks the mind's tendency to build up through association. Because association is just moving to the other, but through association we build up stories and get attached to those stories and start living by those stories. Okay? You need to check this tendency. Mantra is a very clever way to check that tendency. No build up. Because one chant is exactly the same as the second chant. You are not using first chant to associate and think about something else, and then something else, and then something else. Okay? Now, after having done that, when already you have checked your tendency to build up, then comes what Surya shows as contemplating on realities. Okay? What is the meaning of chant? When I am doing Om Ishaya Namaha, what is this Isha? What is my salutation to this Isha? What does it mean?
I bow down to the noise.
It's more about somehow all this hurt and fears and all that I am carrying, seeing what he's constantly talking about is seeing the honor, seeing the presence of Ishvara. Because I need to heal myself. Because I'm already coming with a mind which is afflicted. I need to bring in what? Awareness of Isha there. Because before I lived my life, there was no awareness of Isha's presence there. So therefore, I am carrying a lot of hurt, guilt, afflictions within me, sadness, depression, all kinds of things. The mind is afflicted and it's not ready for Vedanta. What does meditation do? Heals it. Heals it by bringing the teaching. It's not disconnected from the teaching. You see, Vedanta meditation is very different from others use meditation as just kind of a technique. Technique means you stop thinking, or you pay attention to your breathing, or you watch your thoughts. It's simple. Vedanta meditation has multiple levels at which it works. Starting to make you that relaxed person, to what? Bringing your mind to focus. Then what? Reducing the tendency to associate and create big pictures. Fourth is what? Looking into this this afflicted person, bringing in Ishvara, which is in keeping with the teaching, and what? Healing your personal hurts. Because in the class, the teacher cannot heal your personal hurts. The teacher can only make you see the presence in form of psychological laws, in form of laws of dharma, laws of karma, all that the teacher talks. Now, you have to apply all this knowledge with reference to what? Your life and your personal hurts. And you need to heal yourself using this knowledge. Okay? So that means the meaning of the chant is very important, because in Isha is my healing. Understanding of the Isha is my ultimate healing. Our teacher says, if the knowledge is to take place, you need to settle account with Ishvara. Okay. That means you need to bring in all this teaching and apply with reference to your own life. See laws of Ishvara, what? When others have acted in a way that has hurt you. Use the laws of Ishvara to say, I am no longer going to be the victim of that hurt. Laws of Dharma, where I use my free will. See the laws of Ishvara as what? The laws of psychology. As a result of that event, there is a feeling that I cannot deny. I cannot deny. Also, see the presence of Ishvara in form of psychological, multi-dimensional understanding of Ishvara. Ask for help. I don't want to be stuck with this deep feeling of sadness. Please help me. Multiple dimensional use of Ishvara to heal yourself. Meditation. Once that person is healed, you are staying with yourself without this teaching, but applying whatever you have learned with reference to yourself. Then what? If you've done that, next time you are in the class, how are you going to be?
More alert.
Much more alert, much more prepared to see what teacher is talking about. If you are relaxed, if you are not distracted, if you are not sleepy, if you are not projecting, if you are not listening to the Shastra only with what? This hurt and the feeling of whatever. Because you know, this is what I was saying, in 3.5 year course, all that which is dormant, it all emerges. All comes out. And it interferes in your understanding what is going on. Meditation is the time you need to finish this process and carry it forward in your waking. Okay? It works at multiple levels. It is a very integral part of learning. Once all these things are taken care of, your meditation then, according to Vedanta, goes next step, which is what we call contemplation, nididhyasana. When it is cleared of distractions, sleepiness, when it gains focused, when all your emotional needs are healed, then what happens? It is able to contemplate on what is being taught with certain depth. Okay? This is what we call nididhyasana. Nididhyasanam is whatever is studied in the classroom, you see it from now with a focused, undistracted mind, which is a non-projecting mind. Then what? You think about it from many different standpoints so that the knowledge becomes what? Clearer and clearer. Okay? Multiple functions of meditation. So this is what he says, that you have the mind with which to solve the puzzle. While in waking you have different methods. Dharma, karma, different methods. In meditation you are working at a very subtle level. Different things you are taking care of to prepare the mind for the knowledge, which then can be carried forward in your waking. Okay, so this is what he says, that the mind, then what happens is, sometimes also when this awareness is being talked about, the Surya was saying, the meditation and the chants, first the focus is on the chant, and then what? The silence between the chant. That silence between the chant gives you an insight into what? That I am present when thoughts come and thoughts go. Because generally your identity is so much with reference to whatever is going on in your mind. So meditation gives you that doorway to say, hey, not only you do this chants to gain certain focus, but in between the two chants there is this silence, and you are present there in the silence. But when the thought comes, are you present or not? That's where also you are present. So there you get an insight about this presence of awareness which is there when you are thinking and when you are not thinking. So that little bit of absorption from thought itself what? Helps you to see that you are not just the thoughts. Okay? This is the purpose of meditation. Okay? This is what he says. For all these reasons, you need to meditate. Okay? Now, the problem with like everything else is that the meditation makes you so relaxed and it makes you so absorbed at times, then what? You get attached to the meditation. You want to recreate the state of thoughtlessness. You start thinking that this is the end. And this is what Vedanta is talking about, physically resolving everything and experiencing some kind of a calm. So that means now again you have created another tangent. So Gaudapada has to say, but don't get, to this calmness is not what Vedanta is talking about. Okay? So all this is necessary, but that itself can take you on a tangent, avoid that. So that's the next verse we will see in tomorrow's class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate